Nobody can hear us.
This meeting is being recorded. Okay,
I wonder if we have.
very softly, but I can hear you.
Nice
Right.
work.
Good going. I know, I know, we're seeing that, I get it.
All right, as a preliminary matter, this is Ken Bogren, Chair of the Community Preservation Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members or persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Neville Richin,
Here,
Eleanor Antonetti,
Here.
Linda Williams,
Here.
Tim Salvarino,
Here.
Diane Coombs,
Do we have Diane?
Mark Beal,
Here,
and staff, Glenna
Here.
and Kathy Richin.
Here.
All right, anticipated speakers on the agenda, Brooke Moore is not here. Good morning. This open meeting of the Community Preservation Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. During public access does not ensure public participation unless participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Community Preservation Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom app and in person. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating. That some of the attendees are participating by video conference, others are here in person present. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to share your screen with your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the meeting. The meeting materials have been provided to members of the body and are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along with the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We're now turning the first item in the agenda. Before we do, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold your name until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone and computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that generates accurate minutes. For any responsibility with the chair, you have support of you. State your name before speaking, and if members wish to engage in comments of other members, please do so through the chair. Taking you there to identify yourself.
Mr. Chairman, before you go on, I just talked to Brooke. She had it at 2:00 this afternoon. She is on her way into the ugly building now.
Okay, thank you. We will, I have no idea why it was on at 2:00, but anyway, we will go to the agenda and we will get to that when she gets here. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as circulated.
So moved.
Is there a second?
second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
You have to go through the roll call.
Sorry, Neville,
Aye.
Eleanor,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Diane, Mark, and Ken.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. The minutes of December 20 have been circulated. If they've been reviewed, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as circulated.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Neville,
Aye.
Eleanor,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Diane, Mark, and chair votes aye.
Aye.
Right. The next item is the correspondence from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That has been circulated. We've just heard word that Brooke had the wrong time. She will be coming here. As soon as she gets here, we'll move to that item on the agenda. There are 4 fund requisitions that are on the agenda. Scottsdale Trust, Landmark House, Open Space, and Nantucket Interfaith as indicated on the agenda. Is there a motion to approve those requisitions as submitted?
Before we do that, I don't believe the open space under C is correct. The amount on the agenda is not correct.
And what is the correct amount?
I don't have it up in front of me, but that is not correct. So the figure was correct on the on their application.
It was a very small amount, Linda, as I recall.
It was not $300. I signed off on it. So whatever it is, it's fine. It's, I think it's like 14.
With the amount that was submitted with the application, with that correction, is there a motion to approve those fund requisitions with the correction?
So moved.
Is there a second?
So moved. Yep.
Second,
Second by Tim.
on the motion, Mr. Chair?
On the motion for the fund requisitions.
Yeah, could I, on the motion, comment?
Absolutely.
question?
Yeah.
Mark, could I just ask, I hear that you stepped up and took on this project in Sconset. And I just wanted to make sure you had a chance to review the request and that we're good to go.
Yes, I reviewed the request and I had a tour of the lighthouse with Rob Benchley up and down, and they did a beautiful job. It looks great, and I think it's okay to approve it.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Any other questions with respect to any of the other? And also I would remove the extra zero in the Wisconsin Trust, so that it reads 251,100 as opposed to 251,000, 1,000. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, Neville,
Aye.
Eleanor?
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Diane, Mark,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. There's no old newness. There's no old business. There's new business. And first of all, I don't know if any of you had a chance to go to see our new CPC office location. It is terrific. There is first floor space and there's space downstairs. It's at the end of the buildings in that area, and there's parking, lots of parking there. And when you get a chance to go out and take a look at it, have a visit, and you'll be very pleased with the location of where we are. With respect to new project assignments, what I want to do is review all the projects that we have, and maybe suggest some reassignments if people have 4 or 5 projects and someone else doesn't have any. So I will have discussions with you about that. I don't want to have that on the agenda for today, but I want to let you know that I'm going to be looking at that to try and sort of split those out, because historically we have ended up having people stay with projects. And in some instances, I may want to suggest some changes. The third item on the agenda of new business is the warrant article, the final version. The final version has in fact been circulated to you. We have reviewed it. It has been gone forward to the Board of Selectmen, and it is on their agenda as being put forward on our behalf. I would entertain a motion to approve the final version, which has been circulated to you and has been part of the package. I will note for the record that although I have no financial interest in the awards to St. Paul's Church and to the Nantucket Historical Association, I'm going to recuse from those two. I have not financial interest. I do sit on a committee there, but I think that in fairness, for clarity of purpose, that there can be no suggestion that I have other than an independent view of those motions. So with that caveat, and I ask that to be put in the minutes, I would entertain a motion to approve our warrant article for fiscal year 2024 Community Preservation Committee, which has been delivered to the select board and which is on a warrant by the select board on our behalf in the warrants that are moving forward for this year's town meeting.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, did we get any monies back from any of the unused funds this year? I didn't think so.
No,
Okay.
we checked all of that, and so there was absolutely no monies coming back. So this is the only article going forward this year.
Okay, I'll make that motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call, Neville,
Aye.
Eleanor,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
and
Diane's on the phone.
Okay, right. Mark
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, can we have the list of new stuff that we approved July 1 before we figure out who's going to what assignment?
we will circulate that, and at that point in time, I will make some suggestions that it'll be discussion. Obviously, someone who has been on it for a long period of time has the opportunity to say, no, they're not willing to change. And I will respect that as well. But what I'm just trying to do is see if there are some that could be moved so that other members of the committee have an active participation with respect to the process.
Chairman.
Okay,
do
'cause
wanna-
We hang on a second, Tim. What we've done over the years is, when you took over, like Eleanor took over from, I forget now. It was you before, but when somebody takes over somebody's spot, they usually get those, projects. I didn't know if that's where we had departed from.
Well, at this point in time, we have done that. What I want to do is I end up seeing that there are a number of members of this committee that haven't had an opportunity to participate in the process of working with a project and reviewing it and becoming a full participant in terms of that part of our job as members of the committee. And so I wanted to take another look at that and see if there was a way to be able to, in fact, make some adjustments or changes. And if it ends up being that the person doesn't feel that that's the best thing to do in view of the amount of time that they have spent with the project, I will respect that as well.
Okay.
I just wanted, and Ken, I know you recused yourself on the last vote,
Yeah,
then you voted. So I just wanted to make sure it didn't get counted.
oh, sorry, that's right. Well, I recused myself only on two things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Gotcha. So
And
it's
so
okay.
I voted on the rest.
I just wanted to make
No,
sure.
no, but
We didn't have
no, that's a good point,
Yeah.
because I recused myself on those two things, but I'm voting positively on all of the rest of the things.
Okay.
And the minutes will reflect that.
We're good. I just wanted
You
to
know,
make
it's a
sure.
good point. Yeah,
Diane?
Yeah.
Okay, I have
Okay,
Diane. She had some technical difficulties this morning
yeah,
and was not able to log in, and so she's on the speaker. She had some notes. Diane?
Yes. Yeah, I got them. They take a minute to come through, but I have the agenda and I have the agenda for today. I printed that out. So I'm here.
okay, so is there anything, we have basically gone and approved the items on the agenda with making some minor technical corrections with respect to two numbers that were wrong. Is there anything else that you need to hear from us to be brought fully up to speed to this point in time until until Brooke gets here and we can hear her presentation?
No, on the only thing was the correspondence. I didn't see that. Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Well,
See,
she's not here yet, and she had the incorrect time. She's on her way here, and as soon as she gets here, we will be able to hear her presentation relative to what the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is suggesting be done with respect to all funders of monies.
and the fund requisition, I went over those and they seem good, so that would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Just another picky on your agenda. It actually says the link will be on the agenda. So let's not go through that again.
Yeah, it says that, but it isn't.
I know it isn't.
It's on the agenda that was posted on the town website.
I printed this off of what you sent me and it has to be on any agenda that I get.
The one
Period.
that was posted, originally
Oh,
posted on the town website.
Oh, the not updated one.
I know that, but it's not on the one that you sent by email yesterday or the day before, or Friday. I can't remember which day. I printed everything out. It has to match.
Pause this good. While we're waiting for Brooke, do you want me to pause the Brooke? Oh, there she is.
Here's- Welcome, come sit down. Right, Brooke Moore has just,
No, Dan.
has just joined us. And so,
Apologies, sorry.
right, so if what we've got completed agenda other than your presentation, and I just want to have some clarification. As I read through the proposal, I thought it said that there was a suggestion that this would be put forward at the annual town meeting this spring, but I think that that's not the
It's been
case. That
Delayed a year.
it's been delayed.
Yeah.
So with that change, perhaps you could take us through the logic behind the presentation and answer the
Ken?
question.
Excuse me,
Hold on, what's been delayed?
can I say something, please? Ken, I
Yes,
don't know if you're aware of it, but when you turn your head away from, if you have a mic, you really have to speak into the mic so we can all hear what you're saying. We're losing a lot of the things that you're saying when you turn your head. In
Yeah, I
other
was gonna
words,
say that.
what you
Okay,
just said,
I
I
got-
missed,
I
what you
got
just
it.
told Brooke, I just missed half of it.
okay, well, all I said was that in the presentation that you said, it indicated that it was something that would be going forward at the warrant article for the town meeting this spring. That is not the case, and I just wanted to confirm that was the case, and she confirmed that, and she will talk to about when it's proposed to be put forward to be voting on at town meeting.
Now, why was it delayed?
Because what, can I start from the beginning or?
Yeah, let's start from the beginning.
Okay. So first of all, my apologies for, I just had this on the calendar at the wrong time. So thank you, Linda, for calling me and catching me so I could get here and not miss the opportunity to speak to all of you today. The original purpose of this proposal, what came out of conversations at the Affordable Housing Trust around the disparate language in the community and in our documentation around who we're serving with town funding, municipal funding for affordable housing, which is sort of where we all started years ago, was the idea of concept of affordable housing. And what we've learned in our work, which is probably evident to all of you, is that the need for housing stretches a broad swath of the community from the level we consider affordable, which for subsidized housing inventory purposes is 80% housing price for 80% area median income. For current CPC language, up to 100% area median income. And then in our borrowing authorizations and other, other documentation for the housing trust and our funding sources and language that's being worked out at a state level for the housing bank bill. And there's a lot of disparate language and disparate definitions of what we're trying to achieve in the housing markets, both locally and regionally. And so we took a look at all of the language that we've had, and we've been trying to increase the flexibility of the use of funds to meet the broader need in the community. We know that there's a desperate need for home ownership opportunities, well in excess of 100% area median income. The Covenant program already serves 150% area median income. And what we learned was that the Housing Trust Declaration of Trust didn't really speak directly to define what markets and segments of the market we were authorized to and intending to serve. So we started with proposing language, which will be on the warrant this year, to amend the Affordable Housing Trust Declaration of Trust. And the language in that you have received here is mirrored in that change at the housing trust level, which is to define affordable housing as serving households making up to 100% area median income, and using a new phrase that's sort of developed in the marketplace to replace what's often referred to as workforce housing to attainable housing. In other words, housing that's affordable to people making more than that 100% AMI, but who still can't afford housing in our current open market So up to 240% area median income. And that language mirrors the language that we started with in our initial proposal that we've been working on for a decade to get a transfer fee on real estate sales to fund affordable housing, something we've referred to as the housing bank legislation. And are you all able to hear me? Okay.
See, it's referred to as the housing bank legislation, you said?
Yes. I see.
Okay, so what we refer to as the housing bank bill, which is the transfer fee that we've had as a home rule petition up at the state for a decade now. That we have not been able to make traction because of opposition with the Massachusetts Association of Realtors has lobbied hard against it. And so the housing bank
Thank you.
authorizes the use of funds up to 240% area median income. And what's happened in the meantime is nearly a dozen other communities have also put forth their own home rule petitions to create transfer fees or housing banks, including 7 communities in Martha's Vineyard, Provincetown. Boston came into that within the last year or two. So the legislature's been faced with multiple petitions for transfer fees, and there's been a work on a what would be called an statewide enabling legislation that would be an opt-in. In other words, the state would create a framework for a transfer fee, and if a community met certain criteria, they could pick from a menu of the percentage that it would be and the price point at which it would apply. And so now there's this statewide effort, and most of those efforts have defined the upper limit at 240% area median income. So what we're looking to do at the trust is to make the language consistent across all of the existing and potential funding sources we have to solve our housing crisis for 2 purposes that I outlined in my note. One is the community's confused about what we're doing. People don't really know, definitions and words and phrases are thrown around quite a bit, and they're understood, used in different organizations and different efforts. And it can be a little confusing on a messaging to the community about what it is we're actually doing and trying to achieve. And that goes to the voters at town meeting and at the ballot box for funding. I lost my train of thought there for a second.
Few reasons.
And then also for really flexibility in how we fund the build out of acquisitions we've made and future acquisitions we might do. So for instance, we have a debt exclusion language that allows us to fund up to 240% AMI as an upper limit for how our funds are used for creating the rental properties at Orange Street that we own and Bartlett Road. But our trust language didn't have that definition in it. And so town council was concerned about the inconsistency of that and wanted us to clear it up across the board. Now, that brings us to where we are today with the CPC. You are unique in that you were the first funding source for affordable housing statewide and system-wide that was defined at all, as I understand it. And your language caps the use of your funds at 100% area median income. There are a number of advantages to using CPC funds in the acquisition of and the creation of affordable housing. It gives us more flexibility on the acquisition side to negotiate. The use of CPC funds creates some exceptions in procurement that allows us some flexibility in acquiring properties if we're using CPC funds for the acquisition, which has given us the opportunity to negotiate purchases without having to make the public aware of them and invite other bidders to compete with us. So that's been a huge advantage to us. And frankly, you guys have been incredibly generous supporters of our efforts for a very long time and still are, to the tune of $700,000 a year of your funds to support the debt that we already have authorized from prior town meetings. So really, this is a request for you all to consider. We do not want to impose this on you. And to answer the question of why we're delaying is that town council's been really busy on a lot of things, and we've had some delays in getting some legal language from them. And it just, we all agreed at our last meeting that this just felt too short notice on your guys' part to ask you to have a full throated conversation about what this means for the CPC and so forth. And frankly, we're not before you this year with a funding request other than to support the existing debt for us. So there really was no reason to rush it through at this town meeting. And so this would be a home rule petition. It's probably not likely to get any opposition at the State House. However, there are other CPCs in other communities who are also looking at the same thing. And it's been suggested that we also coordinate with them to make sure that when we all go to the State House for this change, that we're coming with a unified message and make that process at the State House easier, and therefore delaying it makes sense. But most importantly, to make sure you guys, this is a request, not a demand. And I just want to be clear on that. This is, we would not do this without your agreement. It wouldn't, it just doesn't make any sense. And so I'm here really to propose this and to begin the conversation and to ask questions about what this might mean to you, how you all see your role in the housing crisis and in helping with the housing crisis in your town, and to decide whether this proposal even makes any sense. So that's why I'm here.
Linda, you have a question?
Yes. A bunch of questions. Ken may be able to clarify this as well. The 100% of median isn't something we set up because the covenant is 80%. The program goes to 150%. And I'm confused as to the 100%, Ken, is something that was established at the state level, correct? And we'd have to get that adjusted. Forget the 240. We'd have to get the 100% adjusted.
No, the fact is that the whole idea behind this project is to be able to have a home rule petition that goes up to the state, where the state approves the change from the 100% up to 240%. So that's all part of the process. It is not an independent process. We can't do it on our own. That's why there's a home rule petition. It has to go to the state. The state approves it or disallows it. Once that's done, we're in a position where we can then implement it as a result of the state approval.
All right. The other thing is that right now, the only restricted units are up to 150%. Obviously, the 80%, unless it's all rental, is the only one that goes on the shy list. Are you suggesting that we change the covenant language, which the housing authority owns as well, or just this part of it? Or the whole process?
So I'm not sure I'm understanding your question in that. So right now, as we use CPC funds, say we do a rental project, right? And we're using CPC funds. Those funds have to be used for units that are deed restricted at 100% AMI or below. That is the
Right.
limit of how we use it. So every development we use CPC funds has to have some of those units in it. And those are, expensive and deeply subsidized, and they're an important part of the package for sure. But having that constraint when we use CPC funds just decreases the flexibility of how we do an RFP for a particular project when we're using CPC funds. So, but in terms of the deed I'm not understanding what you mean by the covenant, Linda, but those deeds.
It's in the bylaw. The covenant restrictions, which the housing authority created, I don't know, years ago. In order to sign, because I have to sign every one of these covenants when they come in. The deed restrictions under the bylaw at the moment only go to 150. Are you also looking at changing the cap on the local covenant deed restriction in perpetuity? What mechanism would you use beyond 150% unless we also adjust the covenant program to deed restrict them in perpetuity? There isn't anything beyond 150% on the books at the moment. Are you contemplating asking the housing authority to change the maximum of the covenant deed restriction that's applied to all of these affordable units? Because I don't know how you're going to restrict the units over 150 if you don't have a mechanism to do that.
Okay, so that's a good question. I don't have the answer. I will find out.
Yeah, because I have been farming around with Housing Nantucket, et cetera, about raising the covenant program from 150 to 175 or 200 as it is, with a change in the asset caps. Because I think that's going to be a big problem over 150 the asset caps are going to keep you from going over 150. So I think this is a conversation you might want to get on our agenda at the Housing Authority, because I think something needs to happen because things have changed since we instituted it years ago. So I think if we're doing this, we need to have some mechanism of putting a deed restriction on above the 150 if you're going to be going to 240.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that are swirling around in my head to understand that. But for instance, now, if you fund a Habitat home, Habitat holds the deed restriction for that, right?
Not, well, the DHCD just approved the two that I signed off on the other day.
So there's a number of different entities that hold deed restrictions, and we're anticipating the creation of a new community land trust that will be targeting higher income levels and will be holding deed restrictions on home ownership opportunities for those units. So I think it could be an amendment of the housing authorities deed restrictions or the addition of a new one from 150 to a higher level or under different entities. And that's really just it's really in who develops the unit and where's the deed restriction it's in multiple entities actually at this point, including DHCD and HAC. And there's a whole, depending on how a development is created, those deed restrictions are held in different places. So
we need to have a mechanism for that deed restriction, and there isn't one right now on Nantucket above the 150. So we have to have that conversation with the housing authority to adjust for just practical purposes, to adjust us, as well as maybe creating a different set above the 150 to 240. So I understand delay is probably good because we all need to have a conversation. You, us, Housing Nantucket, we need to have a conversation about how we want to do this so we are ready to file it for the next one.
Mhm. Absolutely, and that's the whole point of today, is to start.
Are there other questions? Eleanor?
Hi, for you, Mr. Chair. So obviously, having been involved with affordable housing, I'm completely for flexibility. I understand, I've read a lot about this. I have a maybe naive but blunt instrument question, which is straight math. I'm concerned about, we have a fixed pot of money in terms of CPC allocations. And now we're widening the breadth of target to 240. I'm concerned about us helping people who are most in need.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm concerned about, that's a big jump.
Yeah.
That's like, I have kids on scholarships at schools. I qualify because I meet that lower threshold. If they start adding other people, that pot of money is distributed, I get less. It's a selfish thing, but I'm
Totally
thinking about
understand.
those people who, it's not that I don't want us to help 240. It's not that I don't agree with the rationale behind this. Again, I've been reading about it. I think it makes a lot of sense, and implementation sounds very complex. So that's a Venn diagram that needs to be drawn up. But that's my question for you, straight math. How does that ultimately impact those who are the most in need, which you all obviously are most desirous of helping?
I, as a housing trust member, would never abandon people at the lower end of the scale. I don't think that's, I mean, we understand the breadth of need. Absolutely. I mean, I mean, I've made this argument myself, having a bucket that's restricted to the lower end of the scale forces the system to create units at the lower end of the scale, and that has value. I would say the other thing that I thought of is that this board could further restrict anything that you did. So we came to you with a project or proposal, you could say, this is intended for the units at this level. Right, so it gives you the flexibility, but you also have the option to further restrict at your own discretion at any point in time if you see the winds blowing in a direction that makes you feel uncomfortable.
So like a case by case basis.
Absolutely. When we come for funding, you could say, that's fine, but we're going to restrict that funding at, and you could pick any level below 240 where you see the need. And we would have to demonstrate the need, right? We are planning to do a lot more research and understanding the need at different levels and different family sizes, different unit sizes, et cetera. The goal here is to build as much flexibility into the system to be able to address all need. But I mean, I've had the same argument in my head that you're having, Eleanor, to make sure, and you as a board would always have that possibility. But we then could come to you and say, there is a huge need this year at 120% AMI. And we just spent, we just met our shy list quota. We focused on 80% units for the last 10 years. And now we know actually, because the Violet Place buy down that we just did at Richmond, they priced those at 110 and 120% AMI because they had applicants who made $10 more than 100%. Or $20 more than 110%. And so we're getting really much better at targeting units so that they are available to people who are in a fairly narrow band of income that would not be able to afford it at a higher level and wouldn't qualify at a lower level. So having this flexibility really will allow us with more data and information on the need to really target what we're doing and create a stock of housing units that are available at, like stutter steps along the income level. It's more complex, I agree, but it also guarantees availability to people in those those narrower income brackets who lose out otherwise.
So Ken, could we do that? If we approve this ultimately, when it does come down to
Yeah.
it, would we be able to, as Brooke says?
Absolutely, because
Okay.
you have anything that is within the authority that you've been given, you can do.
Okay,
It
so within
doesn't-
that bracket.
Within that bracket,
You
right?
could narrow it
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I- that's all
Neville,
I-
you had a question?
and we can confirm that.
You have to unmute your phone, Neville. We
Neville.
can't hear you.
Unmute your phone.
He's on a computer.
Unmute your system, Neville.
Who's the host? The host can unmute him if we have one.
I'm the host and I cannot. I can only ask him to.
How did he?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, okay.
Okay, thanks for that last question. The last question got into an area though that I was not particularly interested in terms of the medium house percentage and all of that stuff. I am interested in the CPC. What you are doing is you are asking the CPC to support you in this petition. Am I correct? Is that what
Yes.
the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is doing with this?
Yes.
And I see one paragraph of, I would read it. The Nantucket, the Housing Authority would like to ask the CPC to consider a home rule petition to be included in the warrant article of town meeting 2023, being told now that it's not going to be ready. So it's not ready for 2023, but it's going to be ready sometime in the future. And the proposed article would align the community preservation funding language with others noted above. Now, are you saying that you are going to change to our language? Are you saying by us supporting the language that you, I'm talking about you as the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, would come forth with this proposal, that we are supporting it will agree with that language, which will change our language here on Nantucket?
I think, I imagine this would be ultimately a select board sponsored article.
Yeah.
So it would be a town article that would only be brought to the select board with the agreement of, the support of, with joint support from the Affordable Housing Trust and the CPC, this commission.
Okay, so whatever the
Yeah.
language is, if the CPC agrees with it, they are agreeing with the language
Whatever.
that's brought
Neville,
forward
it would-
by the
they would be
Affordable
agreeing-
Housing Trust
they would-
Fund.
We've been having a discussion as to the scope and the definition of the language. That is not in place at this point in time. What's been happening this morning is an indication of there are certain issues that have been raised as a result of that need to be addressed more clearly. And so at the point in time that we're ready to in fact find out what the language that seems to work for everybody, it's at that point in time, that language is what needs to be agreed to, not any language that's here today.
Okay, so then basically, it makes this whole thing moot.
They don't want to proceed unless we seem
I
to be
know, I
like we're
understand
on
that,
board.
Linda. I understand. I'm talking about what we have right now. I mean, thanks for the explanation of what this petition is about, but right now, we're at a hold still on the whole thing.
Correct. This is just a starting point of a conversation that says.
Right.
We're unifying our language in all of these other areas. And we are proposing that it's a good idea for the CPC to follow that
Okay,
language, become consistent. But if y'all aren't comfortable with that for any reason at all, we would leave it be.
right. The only reason why I would question anything like this is if we as the CPC aren't taking part in composing this language. If it's brought to us as a language that was made up by, as you said, the Board of Selectmen and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, fine. If it's something where we have representatives in the room when the language is being drafted based on what the CPC is about, I would feel a lot more comfortable with that in going forward.
We have
Jim,
Well, Neville, I think we always have the opportunity to have our own independent review by council to make sure we're all in agreement with what's being proposed, what the effect is on us, and we're moving forward together. But I think as I heard the discussion this morning, this is really just broadening the ability for the CPC to be able to handle requests that exceed caps that are in place now. It's looking to raise those caps. And we still have total autonomy to make our decisions based on the independence that we have by being a duly elected and independent legislative body. And I love what Eleanor brought up. I think the fact that we could consider requests at the higher end of the spectrum for folks that are in a much better position than folks at the lower end, but still can attain stability in the housing market. But that's something that we can discuss as a local CPC, whether or not the need at that end of the spectrum is greater than the need at the lower end. So that's something I'm sure not only our board, but the Housing Authority, the Board of Selectmen, the Housing Trust, everybody's going to be grappling with that discussion. So I don't think this is a bad thing for us to explore at all level. I think, and I love the fact that the timeline is now extended because there are a lot of questions and we can explore them all thoroughly before we have to put our vote on the line.
I like I think of this sort of like, you look at a word up in a dictionary and there's A, B, C definitions, and you can kind of say, well, this is how I'm applying that word. This is the definitional, use of that word. And then we now have affordable, which can be synonymous to a respect with attainable. Although it's more specific. So I sort of think of it that way. It's the same word, but there's optional definitions, and we can use all of those definitions and we can have our own restrictions. I like that part.
I do too.
Are there any further discussion? Linda, your hand is up again. Is this from before?
No, I was just saying that I like,
No,
I like the discussion that we're having. Now we just have to, are you talking to me?
No,
Me.
I was talking to Linda because her hand is
I
up.
just realized you said, see what I
Whether or
said?
not
I
it's
can't hear you
before.
too well, Ken.
All right, the question is, maybe you covered it, but it went quickly. Where did the 240 come from? Exactly.
The 240 started out, the housing bank is the housing bank bill set the 240 mark, and it's sort of a number that's been tossed around Commonwealth wide through that housing bank discussion. And I mean, it could be any number, honestly. I mean, at this point in time, and the way the real estate market's going, it could be 300 and we'd still have people who couldn't afford a market, you know. However, I think it's now the common narrative, and what we're looking for is some consistency and understanding in the housing, the affordable and attainable housing market conversation.
And that number's been
I
out there
just-
for about, and that number's been out there for close to 10 years, because that's how
Yeah.
long that it first came out.
But that's.
Yeah, it just seems like a random number to me. It just seems the 240 as opposed to 220, as opposed to 200. It just seems 240 is like, where the hell did that come from?
I think that's an ownership kind of, you know what I'm saying? I think it's more to help people who want to get to own as opposed to rent. I think that's my thinking about it. To be able to go up to 240, we can help more people who are just at that threshold, $10 over or under, you know, to being able to own a home as opposed to renting.
Yeah, well, you
That's
see, I
fine.
deal with the 150 cap, and if you're $10 over the 150, you earn $10 more than that person at the covenant level who qualifies for the covenant. You're
Yeah.
screwed, and then nobody's covering you from the 151 to the 200 or the 240. There's no
Yeah.
coverage anywhere for that amount.
Yeah.
Right.
The only place is at the 175% workforce housing
Force
units.
housing,
that
which
are-
we are producing because I'm doing the Richmond project out there, all those houses. We've got 2 of them. And then the 3 that I just got approved for Housing Nantucket across the street from us on Honeysuckle are all 175s. So there's a huge market for those 175s that don't qualify for the 150s.
So let me give you an example of how the CPC might participate in a program.
And that's what I want to hear.
Amended language. The Housing Trust has long sought to do a down payment assistance program. You guys are familiar with our closing cost assistance program that covers closing costs up to $15,000 for people buying deed restricted units. And that has changed up to 175. So every one of these affordable and the old workforce housing units are available, but we've had long conversations with the folks at the banks, and most of those 175 units are selling around $900,000, which for many people, even at a 5% down payment or a 10% down payment, is just simply unattainable. They can't get the cash together and be able to afford get a mortgage approval at that number. And so one of our goals is a down payment assistance program, and we're starting to think about how that might look, but it might look like something, a dollar for dollar match. For every dollar the homeowner puts down, this program could match up to a certain amount, not to exceed 10% of their purchase price, something like that. So that's the market that has the most trouble. The 80% units, people tend, their price so low, the down payment's attainable. But at 150 or 100, even covenant buyers or these Sandpiper workforce units. So we couldn't use CPC money for that. We can't use debt money for that. We can't use borrowing money for that because you can't. Bond counsel won't let us use the stuff we've been approved for debt exclusion. So the CPC could come in and fund a pilot program for a down payment assistance program with some money next year. And that would allow people who will not get those Sandpiper units because they don't have enough down payment to get their mortgage approved. to be able to, even though they can afford the mortgage, to own a home. So there's a concrete example of how adding this flexibility to the CPC language could,
This is ownership. This is why I keep honing in on that, because the rental,
There's a conversation going on.
sorry.
Yeah. One person at a
Um,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a concrete example of how your direct funding with cash dollars, not borrowing, could solve a piece of the puzzle that has not yet been solvable to us because we don't have a funding source for it. So I hope that helps.
Could I ask a question on that, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair? So let's suppose.
I guess,
Waive a-
excuse me, holding your hand up. Does anybody see me holding my hand up
Yeah,
Or
both of us
two or
are
three
holding our
times.
hands up.
before Linda spoke and everything? I just want to, I don't want to sit too much. I just want to. Who's talking now?
You are.
You,
Okay, I don't see anybody on the board. I wanted to make a comment on that. Housing Nantucket, I believe, the CPC had that. They had, Housing Nantucket came to us, part of their proposal many, many, many years ago, where we funded, they had a program that they funded, they give people money for down payment. They got the money from the CPC. I was thinking about that when you were talking about this proposal going forward to make housing affordable here on Nantucket in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And I think that is a very, very good idea, but we've done that before. And I think it's something that we can do again. I think what they did, it just got out of doing that. They used up all, and it was a very good program that Housing Nantucket had, where they were getting the down payments to help people with getting the funding for to give people the down payments that they could not afford when they were buying a new house. And it was for all for home ownership. And I would like to, if it's at all possible, for me to just mention that in going forward, that you actually do put that in your proposal at the Affordable Housing Trust Fund with this.
Linda has her hand up.
I don't believe that program was successful at Housing Nantucket. I believe they gave the money back because nobody did it.
You're
But
absolutely right. Linda, I was just saying to Tim, I don't remember it ever moving forward at all.
it didn't.
So-
It didn't. Nobody wanted to put the and back in 10 years ago, nobody wanted to put those restrictions on it. But as far as the down payment assistance, I started the Housing Trust Fund. And we were all involved with the charrette about 20 years ago. And that was, besides gap financing on the, gap financing is what it was back then. And the closing costs, which I got up to 15,000 when I was still the chairman of the trust. That's been the biggest issue, is the down payment. And I know it's been an issue with the 80%ers, the down payment assistance, because they don't have it. Even the 80%ers don't have it, even at the lower level. And I talked to Penny about this a couple of weeks ago about this down payment assistance from the trust, which is critical at the moment because they're requiring so much. I think it's essential that you guys get that program running now, because I've been on that bandwagon for 20 years now, and it's still not an issue. It's still not up and running. So I think the trust needs to concentrate on, however you do it, getting a down payment assistance, whether it's percentage or however, get it going now, because that apparently, according to all the people I've spoken to and the Covenant people, that's been the biggest problem, not the 15,000 closing costs, which has been essential for these guys. It's the down payment that's causing the problem all throughout the income spectrum.
Are there any new issues that we need to talk about at this point in time? Because clearly this is something that we're going to be looking at moving forward. And in view of the time constraints, I'm wondering if there aren't any new issues. I think this has been a really very helpful and useful discussion. And I think it's one that's going to be going forward. And I'm sure that Brooke will make sure that we stay involved in this. Eleanor?
Might it be helpful, instrumental for Brooke and her group, if we do have subsequent questions, we'd send them to Glenna to forward to Brooke,
Absolutely.
or to you,
Yeah.
Glenna? Okay.
Absolutely. Actually, Glenn, if you could forward them to Tucker, Holland, and Haley at the housing office to make sure they get. noted and distributed to everybody.
Tucker Holland, and who's the other person? Haley?
Haley Cook.
I can send you their email.
Yeah.
He's in his
Okay.
office.
Have it.
Should we take a sense of the meeting now so Brooke gets an idea of whether or not she should keep going with this? Because there's a lot that has to be fleshed out. And if we're not sort of going down that road, then Brooke's going to be wasting a lot of time.
Well, you can do a sense of the meeting, but considering the participation that everybody has had at this meeting, I think it's pretty clear that this is something that we want to get a greater level of understanding about and see whether or not it's something that works, can work for us and can work for the community.
So if I may have a thought, it may make sense after town meeting is over, maybe to invite Brian Turbot to come and talk about the funding side of this and why this is important from the finance department's point of view and what the limitations are on the funding we have. To answer Linda's question, because most of our funding is borrowing, it can't be used for down payment assistance. So that's one of the hurdles.
So none of
for-
our bonded money, none of our 10 million can go towards down payment assistance.
No.
That's a
It
problem.
Yeah, so, and that's just, that is the function of borrowing flowing through to down payment assistance as a loan. So anyway, I don't understand the mechanics of that, which is why, perhaps having Brian Turbot's input on that for you guys to better understand would be helpful. One of the next steps in this conversation.
Just say, Tim's got his question here.
So, Brooke, if I could just ask this question, and it may be a silly one, but the whole intent here is not to restrict how the CPC appropriates its money. It's to change the rules so we have more flexibility on the request before us.
It's not to require you to fund at higher levels, it's to give you the flexibility to do so if the trust comes to you and says, this is where the need are, for CPC dollars to be most useful to solve the housing crisis today,
Mhm.
that you have
Perfect.
the window to be able to help in the ways that we bring to you.
Because we're capped way lower right now.
Correct.
Perfect.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Brooke. That helps me a lot.
And,
Okay.
and as we are capped so low, and the gap financing that Housing Nantucket didn't work before, and you saying that you cannot use federal funds for gap financing, which is not CPC's money, you can use CPC's money if you were to initiate that gap financing again. Am I correct, Brooke?
So CPC direct funding, not CPC debt. So.
And not the
No, no.
bond, not the money from the bond. You
No.
can't use the money from the bond for it, only direct,
No,
like we
let
used
Brooke
to,
answer, please.
direct cash.
Right, the money that we raise out of our surcharge and the money
Yeah.
we get from the state.
So we actually kind of hurt ourselves a little bit jumping into the bond because we've restricted.
Brooke,
No,
so
they need
can-
that money
can
to
you-
buy
Can you answer
property.
my question,
We
please?
need the money.
I wasn't talking about the bonds. I was talking about monies that come from us, Brooke.
Yeah.
If you can initiate that gap financing, funding for gap financing, am I correct?
As far as I know, yes. If you
Yes.
were to make an allocation for a down payment assistance program next year, we
Absolutely.
could use
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's what I want to know. I don't.
It's not bonded.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay, is there any other items that need to be discussed? And if not, I think this has been a very, very useful, very thoughtful, and a very inquisitive and very curious conversation. And I think that it gives us a lot to think about. So I'm prepared to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Eleanor, seconded by Linda. All those in favor by roll call. Neville,
aye.
Eleanor,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Diane,
Aye.
Mark Beal, and Chair
Aye.
says aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.